Hello, this is Austin Mackell from ImportantCool, and I'm joined by Associate Professor of Journalism, Martin Hirst. He's recently been the subject of a bit of a media storm after he was suspended from Deakin University over a tweet which called Sky News viewers masturbating chimps. Is that about right? Is that the long and the short of it?
It's not quite the whole story, actually. There are 3 tweets involved that I've been sacked over or potentially sacked over. One of them was the masturbating chimps tweet that you talked about. Another one was a picture of a hat, which I happen to have here with me.
Okay, yes.
I don't know whether you can read that.
It says, fuck it.
Fuck it. Yeah, it does, yeah. But when I've got it on, it's almost impossible, like it's hard to read. But anyway, I tweeted out a picture of that hat, and the tweet was basically along the lines of, you know, if you're going back to work after Easter, after the Easter holiday, maybe you need this hat. It's a subtle hint to your boss. Basically just a jokey reference in the Australian way towards going back to work after a long weekend. It really was no more than that. The third tweet, a little bit more serious. Deakin University has accused me of threatening a student, threatening to interfere with the student's academic progress, I think is the technical term they've used for this charge. Basically over a tweet I sent out to somebody who was trolling me, who I didn't even know was a Deakin student. I was involved in a discussion with a conservative journalist from the Herald Sun newspaper. Her name is Rita Panahi, if any of your viewers want to look her up. She was harassing somebody over a comment about Islam and the KKK, how similar ISIS is to the KKK, which is something that she objected to. She called him an idiot or something like that. And I read the piece and I intervened and said on behalf of this guy, it's okay, it's not you, it's Rita who's unstable. So she then tweeted out something along the lines of, ha ha ha, I've been called unstable by this geriatric communist. And then this other guy got involved, started trolling me. He tweeted, I'm glad I'm not under this man's tutelage. So he, at that point, obviously knew who I was, and I had no idea who he was. And if you look at my Twitter profile, it's very hard to work out who I actually am. But he knew. Yeah. So I tweeted back to him, are you happy to fail commerce, with a question mark? Because he'd said he was a commerce student. And Deakin interpreted that as me threatening to go into the Deakin grade management system, which is called Callista, to somehow go into Callista and change this guy's grade and think that I'd get away with it. I mean, people at Deakin have said to me, you can't even do that. He's in a different faculty to you. How could you possibly get access to his grades? I don't know what Deakin thought I was going to do to actually carry out this threat, Austin, because they haven't given me any information. They've told me there was a complaint about that tweet. Now, I've checked with the university personally, and I've been told that the complaint was not from a student. The university has now conceded that. The student didn't complain, but they won't tell me who's complained.
So the Twitter user you were talking to hasn't made a complaint?
No.
Okay.
No. The tweet user identified himself as a Deakin student. Now, interestingly, his name is Lachlan McDougall. Interestingly, if you, and I have done this, followed Mr. McDougall's Twitter account over the last few months, and I've had to do that to defend myself because, you know, I'm fighting for my job here thanks to my interaction with this guy. He is not some innocent young first-year student who doesn't know what they're doing. He was clearly very close to this right-wing journalist, Rita Panahi. She had pinned several of his tweets to her Facebook page, obviously promoting him. He was involved in one night with some other people on Twitter in a campaign of attempting to troll some high-profile Australian feminists in order to get himself blocked. He got involved recently in a Twitter discussion about the incident with Aboriginal MP Nova Peris, when she was racially abused on Facebook by a Liberal Party member. He got involved in that Twitter exchange about that.
He's a serial right-wing troll. He likes to. He's a right-wing Twitter user who likes to go around and get in fights with left-wing people and who likes to, you know, who maybe targeted you knowing of you as a left-wing figure at Deakin University? I mean, there's another question here. Is it's like, do you think that... Sorry, I didn't catch you there.
I said that, yeah, that's just about what happened, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think these tweets are really what it's about, or is there some other reason that people at Deakin University or the administration would want to get rid of you and these are providing a pretext?
Well, I mean, look, you know, I mean, I think it's a pretext, to be honest. I've got history at Deakin, and your viewers can go back and search all of this. It's all on the public record, and a lot of it is covered on my blog, which is called Ethical Martini, and I've covered it there over a number of years. It goes back to 2011, Austin, when I appeared before a government-sponsored inquiry into media regulation in Australia, known as the Finkelstein Inquiry. Now, I made a submission to the Finkelstein Inquiry about mobile journalism, about Mojo, right, and about citizen journalism, and about trying to actually expand the public sphere through citizen journalism. And I was invited to give a presentation. So I went down there with my PhD student who had been working on this stuff, Ivo Burum, B-U-R-U-M, and have a look at his work at Citizen Mojo. It's really good. We went to talk about that. Now, I turned up there at 9 o'clock to give my evidence about this Mojo project, but that's not what Finkelstein wanted to talk to me about. I ended up being grilled for about 45 minutes about my views on Rupert Murdoch's Australian operations and what I thought of press freedom and media democracy, which I wasn't expecting. So I had to do all of that off the cuff. Now, there's a transcript of that available you can look at on the government website. And there's also a long piece about it on my blog, because what happened, I'd only just arrived back in Australia at that point from 5 years living in New Zealand, and the Murdoch press didn't know who I was. So they treated my testimony quite fairly when they first reported it. They reported it quite favourably in the first report in the Australian newspaper. It was like, this refreshing new voice is here, you see, to tell us what to do. But anyway, once they realised that I was actually a lefty, their tone completely changed. I got a phone call about 10 o'clock the night after I'd given my evidence from the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, which is a Murdoch newspaper, young journalist. He only wanted to ask me one question. Would I confirm to him that I was a former Trotskyist? And I just said, look, no, I can't confirm that, because I'm not a former Trotskyist, I'm a Trotskyist. And of course, that was in the paper the next day. He didn't want to know anymore. You know, they'd obviously done their story. They didn't want to interview me about what I'd said. They just wanted me to confirm that I was communist. It was like the you know, the House American Non-Activities Committee. Are you now, or have you ever been a communist? And I just thought, well, fuck me. But you know, I can't say that. I'm very sorry, because if I use the word fuck on social media, my university will come after me again.
Yeah.
So it goes back a while.
So at least since then, you've been a controversial figure and something that some people in the administration might not want to be associated with, or so you think is there, without getting into legally murky territory, do you think there are individuals in the administration that are after you, or is this, you know, do you know where this is coming from, and what can you say about that?
I can't say very much about that, obviously. What I can say in general terms, I think, give you some ideas about this without mentioning anybody. I think your viewers and readers would be well aware, Austin, of neoliberalism and its impact globally. And the impact of neoliberalism on higher education around the world has been actually an increase in ideological attacks on left-wing professors. I mean, you might remember in 2014 the case of Stephen Salater, the pro-divestment and sanctions and boycotts advocate, who's a Palestinian American who's been involved with the BDS campaign against apartheid Israel. he came to the notice of the Zionist lobby in the US in 2014 at about the same time that Deakin University tried to sack me the last time they tried to sack me. So this is what's happening to me now, is the second time they've done this to me. In 2014, Stephen Slater... Go on.
There was also just recently a case with one of the founders of the Safe Schools program, someone who was part of... Yeah, Rose Ward. And she's been reinstated after public sort of outrage on her behalf. But there's definitely... So you would situate this in a broader sort of trend of neoliberalism to politicize the university. At the same time as, of course...
Yeah, I mean, I think the project of neoliberalism is actually to depoliticize the university and turn it into a degree factory. I mean, well, more of a degree factory than it is already under late capitalism, if you understand what I mean. But yeah, I mean, there's been some very interesting literature come out in the last 5 or 6 years about neoliberalism and the university and its impact on academic freedom and freedom of speech on campus. And I think we're seeing that here now. I mean, you know, university vice chancellors are CEOs today. Their concern is not about the education of the students or about the quality of the research. It's about the bottom line and the profitability and the global standing of their institution. It's about global engagement for universities means sucking in students from third world and developing nations into imperialist countries like Australia to educate them at great expense. So it's really a global wealth transfer to the wealthy universities in the first world countries at the expense of education in places like India, Pakistan, China, and so on, where, you know, Australia is home to hundreds of thousands of international foreign students, all of whom pay ridiculous amounts of money for, in some cases, a second-rate education. And Deakin doesn't want any of that threatened by things that I might say. That's the bottom line.
Two things I'll say is, one, I used to know, just as a sort of analogy, I used to know people in Sydney who would make money to live, you know, people who, with degrees, you know, graduates and stuff, who, in order to make a living in Australia, apart from, you know, selling coffee to bankers, what they would do is do the work for these foreign students who could pay handsomely, because, you know, they've already spent so much money to get the degree, their family's going to give them whatever money they need to get done. And like there was a whole industry of people who would be English tutors who would end up basically writing degrees for writing essays for these people and doing their coursework for them. It's just part of this, you know, it's just, as you say, just a degree factory. And the fact that was so widespread, undetected, to me, says something about the quality of the education that's going on. There's one other comment I'll make, though, is, you know, you said that you have to depoliticize the university. I'll put myself in some danger of disappearing up my own ass into the world of postmodern rhetoric and quote Slavoj Žižek, who says, you know, the true aim of anti-democratic politics is always to depoliticize public spaces, to turn everything into something where it's just a job, value-laden, and there is nothing to think about. Just do it and stop being difficult. That is, in fact, anti-democratic. Depoliticization is anti-democratic politics. There's, you know, it's a sort of, you can't escape the political lens. But we should soon probably back on the specifics of your case. So, I mean, is there anything we've missed in the backstory, or should we talk about what happens next?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, the background story is that they've done this to me before. In 2014, I was stood down without pay for 3 months. And also then I was reinstated, but the penalty was, I mean, I've had a huge financial and professional penalty out of that. My pay was cut, my pay was cut, so 2 years I had to take a pay cut. And I'm basically guaranteed never to get a promotion again at Deakin. I've been discouraged from applying for research grants. I've been discouraged from getting involved in things. I've had PhD students encouraged to go somewhere else. I mean, you know, a list of things which appears to me to be what we might call constructive dismissal. Now, again, I can't say too much about that, and it certainly is not a legal case yet around that issue. It may not get to that point, but, you know, I think that people who know me and my supporters, and certainly the union, would recognise that this is not just about 3 sweary tweets. This is about me not being welcome at Deakin anymore.
Because of your political leanings?
I would argue that, yes. I mean, it's no coincidence that I'm actually a member of the same organisation as Ros Ward. I mean, I've been a Marxist and an active socialist for 40 years. I'm not a flash in the pan wanker Marxist academic. I'm the real deal, and you know, so is Ros.
Well, so she's been reinstated, is my understanding. Obviously, that may not be the end of it. As you say, they tried to fire you once before, and they might find another way to have a go at her. But well, anyhow, what's next? Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I think just on Ros's case, as I understand it, there is going to be some further action on that. I don't think the union's given up yet, and I don't think the back down from Latrobe is going to satisfy anybody, because there was no apology to Ros for what they did to her. It's just, so I don't think that's over by a long shot. My case certainly isn't over. The preliminary decision of the university is that I'm to be sacked. That becomes effective on the 23rd of June if I don't appeal. I'm having a meeting with the union today, and we'll make a decision in the next few days about what we do next. But I think you can be reasonably confident that this isn't over, that I'm not just going to walk away from Deakin on the 23rd of June and accept my sacking. I'm having a meeting with the union today.
Okay. This is an internal process. Is that in front of the, sorry, I beg your pardon my ignorance, is that in front of the Fair Work Commission or anything like that, or is this purely...
Not yet, no. The process takes place under a clause of the enterprise agreement, right? Clause 22. And it takes place under the university's code of conduct. So serious misconduct, which is what I've been charged with, comes up under clause 22 of the enterprise agreement. So it is reviewable by the Fair Work Commission, by the industrial courts, obviously. But it has to go through all the internal processes first. And it goes to what's now called a discipline review committee, which is 3 people, an independent chair appointed by the university, somebody appointed by the university, and somebody appointed by the union. Now, that appeal process can hear matters of substance about the case, i.e. matters of fact, and review the decision. It can also review things in terms of procedural fairness. Now, I can't say too much about that, but I think if I was to appeal, one of my defences would have to be procedural fairness.
And so when
there's a lot going on behind the scenes that people that makes me think the process hasn't been fair.
Yeah, okay. And when does, so you may have just said this, but I might have missed the detail, take place? When does this happen? I mean, assuming you appeal.
Well, I've got to let the university know in about a week whether I'm going to appeal or not. And then if I decide to appeal, the process will kick off from there, and I would imagine that will take at least another 3 to 4 weeks, if not more.
Okay.
So there isn't likely to be a resolution of this until... I missed that.
And you're suspended without pay during this period as well?
Technically, I'm suspended without pay, and I have been now for 8 weeks. The university has just started paying me again. They've made it clear to me that they're doing me a huge favour, by the way. So they've started paying me again until the 23rd of June. Now, and what they've said is, and you can, and your listeners and viewers can interpret this however they like. What they've said to me is that if I decide to appeal, they will then review whether or not they will continue paying me until the review is heard. So,
but if you don't appeal, then what happens? You have paid for. I mean, they could pay you or not anyhow. The decision would still be there.
If I do appeal, they may continue paying me or they may not. If I don't appeal, I'm sacked.
Okay.
So that's the situation.
So okay. You know, this is something we're seeing as sort of a. Is this something you think we're seeing an increase in the amount of attacks on sort of progressive or left wing figures in the academic context? I mean, over the last few years, is that something that's ramped up, or is this just the norm?
Oh no, look, I think definitely. I mean, you know, I mentioned the case of Stephen Salater in 2014 in the US around boycott, divestment, and sanctions against apartheid Israel. And in Australia, there's a very important academic called Jake Lynch of Sydney, who has been involved in the BDS campaign against apartheid Israel as well. And of course, he has come under severe attack from the Zionists in Australia, who've actually, I mean, these people are not beyond making stuff up, right? They lie about it. They accuse him of kicking a woman at a public meeting. And the video, there's video of the entire incident, and it didn't happen. But of course, the Australian newspaper gets hold of that kind of stuff, and they do a process that I call factualization, which is they create a series of facts by interviewing people for their opinion, and then turning that opinion into fact by restating it in subsequent news stories. So you might say to me, "Oh yes, I think, you know, I think white is black," and then in the next news story, it would be stated as a fact that white is black, right? So they drop the attribution, they drop any idea that this could be something controversial. It just becomes a fact. And I've written about this. I've written about this academically, and I think unfortunately, as a consequence of all of this, that the people who are supposed to publish that paper have probably got cold feet, and I doubt it'll see the light of day, apart from on my academia page. I don't think the people who have agreed to publish it will go ahead and publish it. Unfortunately, I think they'll buckle under this pressure. So Jake Lynch in Sydney, good case. Left-wing students constantly under attack. Again, Sydney University and other places. A left-wing student club, I think at Monash University here in Melbourne, was disbanded because of complaints from Zionists based again on them making things up about racist abuse on campus. So look, it's certainly there, and it's certainly, I think you could argue that the Murdoch press is certainly gets involved. I mean, there's been a number of campaigns to try and get rid of Aboriginal activist Aboriginal academics. Larissa Behrendt is one in particular who the Australian campaigned around in 20. You know, so yes.
It's always, so pardon, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but it's always, to me, I'm always surprised when these things happen, that these people are important enough, you know. You know, so people like Jake Lynch and Larissa and you, I'm aware of your work in a sort of, I'm not, you know, following it as closely as I should be, as we all should be, obviously. I hear about these hate campaigns that you get, these major outlets and universities go on, and it's like, are they really so scared of these? You know, none of these people are front page stories or really big deals. They're not Julian Assange celebrities or anything like that. But even just, you know, a nail doesn't have to stick too far out to get hammered down, does it?
No. Well, I mean, I think there's something uniquely Australian about what's happening here. To be honest, I think there's something unique to the media landscape in Australia which has a role in this, and that is the absolutely extraordinary power of the Murdoch press, which is way beyond its actual importance and its circulation and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just appalling. And Murdoch, you know, Murdoch is known globally, particularly in the English-speaking world, for his interfering editorial policies, for his rampant neoliberalism, for his support of apartheid Israel, yada yada yada. I mean, this goes back to Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. This is not something that's new for Rupert Murdoch. The thing is that Murdoch has always been used to having a lot of sway in Australia. He's always been known for what we call here, and excuse my slang, but he's a big, what we call a dick swinger. So he likes to throw his weight around in Australia. He uses the Australian newspaper to do that on a daily basis. It's not a newspaper now. It's a campaign tool for Murdoch's views. And they've been campaigning against journalism educators in particular. And they've had Julie Pizzetti, who the editor of The Australian, threatened to sue her for defamation over a tweet in 2010. Matthew Ricketson from the University of Canberra, who has been in the sights in recent weeks, me, Wendy Bacon, and others from the University of Technology, people from the University of Sydney. There's probably a dozen of us who are high-profile journalism educators. When I say high-profile, somebody who writes an occasional column for a newspaper and who has 2,000 Twitter followers. You know, we're not talking about Noam Chomsky or Julian Assange or Bernie Sanders here. We're talking about low-level left-wing academics who do their bit on a daily basis to change the world in a positive direction. But we come to the attention of the Murdoch goon squad, and they just pile on. It's just a bloody a clusterfuck, a gangbang. They just pile on and put the grid into you, and they do it day after day. Sorry.
But and the administration, rather than we saw it with, they did it with Duncan Story, you know what I mean? There's nobody from nowhere who asked a question that embarrassed two conservative politicians on a TV show. You know, he had a tough question that embarrasses a couple of panelists. Next week is the Murdoch media sort of chasing him around and, you know, telling us about, as I said, his valuable collection of failed relationships and drug habits. His questions about tax, and they're like, oh, well, look at him. He's got a failed marriage and smokes weed. What's he complaining about taxes for? You know, and
that's right.
Bizarre.
Well, you see it. I mean, you see exactly the kind of thing in action there, and the targets are wide and far. It's not just me. It's not just academics. I mean, you're right. It's even people like Duncan Story. You're absolutely right. It's vicious. It's nasty. It's unethical. But you know, I mean, this is what they do. It's how they make their bread and butter. Have a look at their two most important. Have a look at their two most important bloggers, columnists. Tim Blair in Sydney for the Daily Telegraph and Andrew Bolt here in Melbourne for the Herald Sun. They've both done blogs about me in the last couple of days, and I just want to say thank you to Tim Blair, because as a result of your post the other day, Tim, the traffic on my meager little blog, Ethical Martini, is through the roof. I just want to say bless you, Tim, for the free publicity.
You know, we might put a shout out to him in the article we'll include that.
Yeah, we'll do. Please give him a hat tip. It deserves it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean that's remarkable. You know, that's you really can sense, you know, like when the pack goes into attack mode. I mean, you know, they even do it with the Australian Labor Party, as if that's a left-wing force, as if they've got any radical or threatening ideas. Even they're too far off the pale. But what I would say is, traditionally, though, academics expect to be protected to some degree from this kind of hounding by their institution. And in your case, the institution itself is the tip of the spear. It's leading the charge against you, it seems.
Yes, that happened in the case of Ros as well. I mean, the Australians' attack on Ros Ward was disgusting. It went on for, I don't know, 3 months. It got to the point where I'm sure Ros would fear waking up in the morning to see what was being written about her the next day. I really do. I know Ros Ward quite well, and I've seen her quite a bit recently. And she's a strong, fighting woman. And I've seen her on a couple of occasions recently where she's looked really scared, really pale, and a shadow of her normal bolshy self, because you live in fear of these bastards. I mean, you know, everybody has skeletons in their closet, Austin, and I'm no different to anybody else. And there are certain things about my life that I don't want to be made public. But you know, do they know about these things? I don't fucking know. I mean, and I won't know until it's on the front page, and nobody ever will. These people are capable of finding out things about you that you didn't think anybody else but you actually knew. You told one person it's not safe from these fuckers, believe me. And they hound you, they harass you, they try and wear you down psychologically. And so I know how that feels, and I feel very sorry for Roz. I've got my fighting spirit back, to be honest. The first couple of weeks after my suspension, I was miserable, I was depressed, I was anxious. But now I'm like, you know, I'm fighting them again, and they're not going to sack me in secret. They're not going to do this to me in private and get away with it. It's going to be public, and they need to be held accountable. Let me just say one thing about should academics be protected from having spears chucked at them by the media? Look, not necessarily. I can defend myself from people like Andrew Bolt, right? I don't take a backward step. When they come for me, I stand and punch back. I don't run away and hide. And I'm not going to go crying to my Vice-Chancellor saying, please defend me. What I would like is a bit of respect. What I is for the Vice-Chancellor, if she gets a complaint about something that I put on Twitter, instead of waiting a month and then ambushing me at a meeting and having me charged with serious misconduct, why doesn't she show me the respect? I'm an associate professor. I've been an academic for 25 years. I'm not some fucking blow-in. Why can't she show me the respect and treat me like a senior academic and speak to me about any problems she may have with my Twitter account and ask me for my opinions and my views and then sort that out before immediately going to a rush to judgment and charging me with serious misconduct without giving me a chance to defend myself against a complaint from somebody I don't even know who's complained. I don't know whether this is a complaint from somebody who's even got a right to be offended by what I said on Twitter. Who was it?
Yeah, yeah, this is interesting because to get back to the specifics, the most serious, I mean, they all seem pretty spurious to me, but the most of the charges is about a tweet where you just said someone, are you happy to fail at commerce? And this is because they've said that they're a commerce student and you're saying that they're an idiot. Am I correct in understanding what you're meaning?
Basically. Yes, basically.
Because you're an idiot, and I can tell you're an idiot because you stupid tweets.
Yes, basically. I'll tell you what it actually meant. It was so you're happy to fail commerce with a question mark. It was a question. It was an interrogative question, and it was sarcastic. And the implication was, and my intent in the tweet was to say to Mr. McDougall, you're obviously an idiot because you're following Reed Panahi and getting involved in her shit fights as a troll in her troll army. This obviously makes you stupid. Therefore, are you really smart enough to pass commerce on your own merits? I didn't think this Mr. McDougall needed any help from me to fail commerce. That was my intent in that tweet.
And you didn't even know he was a Deakin University student?
No, I didn't look. I mean, look, I'll tell you what happened. And we can check this. I mean, you want a copy of my, my server record or whatever. It'll show you the timeline. It'll show you exactly what happened. I saw these tweets. I sent the tweet to him. The conversation carried on a little bit longer. And then Reed Panahi tweeted to him, CCing me in the tweet, you'd better take a screenshot of that grab a screenshot of that tweet. Okay, so after that, I then went and had a look at McDougall's profile in which he identified as a Deakin student. At that point, my heart sank. And I'll tell you why my heart sank, because I knew at that point that you and I would be sitting here today having this conversation. I knew that Deakin would get hold of this, and I knew exactly what Deakin would do with it, and Deakin has done exactly what I thought they would do with it. So as soon as I knew he was a Deakin student, my heart sank. I just went, oh, fuck. This would come to this. And I knew that you and I would be sitting here having this conversation as a result of that tweet.
Okay. Once you saw he was a Deakin student, you realized that it could be misconstrued. Yes,
of course it could be misconstrued. But let me say, it could be misconstrued most easily by those who wish to misconstrue it. If you took a plain and simple view of this tweet in the context of Twitter, you wouldn't think that was a threat. And the whole thing, let me just tell you something about a threat. In order for a threat to be credible in law, right? There has to be some identifiable evidentiary means, and there has to be some identifiable motive and intent. And in my case, I defy you to find a means, a motive, or an intent.
The unfortunate bit will be that the internal proceedings of Deakin University won't be held to the same standards as a legal proceeding. I imagine the decision makers will have much more discretion.
No. The standards, the evidentiary standards are very, very low. Hearsay and gossip are taken as evidence over documents. Okay, and
do you
I know
think
that
what happens in the do you think what's happening, what happens in the actual appeal room, the actual formal process, is going to be the deciding factor, or do you think the discussion outside and around that in media and on the university is going to be the deciding factor?
I'm going to let other people judge that. No comment.
Okay. One last question before.
I can't talk about the process in front of the committee because it hasn't happened yet, really.
Yeah, but you can't. You don't want to. Yeah, sure. Look, the
look, other people can have a view of that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, let me put it another way. Let me give you an answer. I wouldn't be doing this interview with you if I didn't think that the sunlight of publicity was a good disinfectant for corruption, would I?
Okay, that's yeah. The sunlight as disinfectant is used to be as a truism. Just out of curiosity, as someone who straddles both worlds, which field do you feel is the most intensely politicized and sort of policed, journalism or academia?
Well, I think journalism is certainly more political. I don't think there's anything that's ever written that a journalist ever writes that's not political in some way, unless it's just a report, basically just a straight factual report about a fire or something. You know, it's hardly everything's political. So I think journalism is very highly political, but so too is academia. I mean, the way that the universities are organised in a way is very political because they're incredibly top down now. The management structure is very flat. It reflects a neoliberal profit centre ideology in the university. The preferencing of education for employment over education for intelligence is highly regarded. The system of metrics and measuring in a university is probably a lot greater than in journalism. So while journalism is probably more highly politicized, academia is more heavily policed. The management rhetoric now overwhelms academic discourse in universities today, without doubt. Everything is measured. Research outputs are not measured for the integrity of the idea. They're measured by the number of citations. They're measured by which journal you're published in. Is it more prestigious than the other one? Your worth as an academic is measured by how many dollars you get in research money, not by how you're remembered by your students.
This is on a personal note. I'm probably returning to Australia sometime in the near future. I was considering going back to into some sort of postgraduate study. And everything I hear about Australian universities seems to discourage that, I have to say. I mean, is there, of course, there's still, there must be a lot of constructive intellectual activity still happening on.
Yes, of course. Look, I mean, and I would say, you know, I would argue that my classes are great. And, you know, if you come to me to learn about journalism at Deakin, you'll leave knowing a lot more than when you started, and you probably have a good time doing it. But I can only speak for myself. I know that you know, class sizes are going up and up and up. The amount of hours you get face to face is being reduced. When I first started teaching, the standard semester was 13 weeks. Now you're lucky if it's 11. You used to get 4 hours a week of tuition. If you get 2 now, you're doing very well. and you're paying more for it. I'm 60. I've got 4 degrees, and I haven't paid for one of them. I have not paid a cent for my education in my entire life. These days, 16, 17-year-olds contemplating going to university and thinking they might want to do a PhD, it's going to cost them $500,000 to get the education I've had. You know, and I'm not saying that I'm not a baby boomer who's boasting about my free education here. I'm a baby boomer who's complaining about the fact that Gen X and Gen Y and the millennials will have to pay $500,000 for every education.
And they'll pay all that for a hollowed out education where there's less diversity of views, where their professors are more similar to each other and are exposed to, you know, less novelty and intellectual stimulation.
Well, I mean, I'm dreading the day that a student complains about me saying fuck in a lecture. Because it just, I mean, it's part of, I use that word as an intensifier every fucking day, you know, and it's just a part of speech for me, and I don't regard it as all that offensive or anything anymore. I just regard it as a word. I mean, if a student complained about me saying fuck in a lecture, I'd be right back where I am now. We'd have this conversation again about why I think it's okay to say fuck in front of 19-year-old students, because they say it all the time.
I think they might have
a few words in my lecture they understand.
They might have heard it once or twice before. I actually have a pet theory about that. One of the things that, you know, I should go back to university and study, and it's like, you notice that all the swear words, the words you're not supposed to say, but I'm about to say, like cunt and shit and fuck, they're all Germanic or Gaelic or French words, right? They're all old English words. Whereas and what happens is when you get the Norman invasion and the Latin invasions, you get this, you know, ruling classes that are set up along ethnic lines. So the way that we say beef for food comes from the French, right? Or feces, the shit comes from the French, and that's the classy way to say things. And we would say beef because that's how the upper class person who experiences it on the plate, right? And we would say the cow, which is the old Gaelic word, if you were out in the field actually doing the work of the cattle, right? So there's this divide, and the swear words, obscene words. It's not a matter of the fact that you're talking about sex or excrement or anything else or something like that. The problem is that you're talking about it using the language of the commoner. You're talking about it not using the language of the elite. And I think that's a perfect example of how something which is presented as an apolitical sort of cultural norm, and like, of course, the lecturer can't be swearing, it actually has deep class and ideological and political content in terms of making the university a place that working class people are not comfortable and cannot speak like they would normally speak. They have to learn to be a good academic. You have to learn to speak like the kind of aristocrat who would traditionally be able to participate in. It's a pre-modern taboo that we've maintained. So
I think you're absolutely right about that, Austin. I think the class element's really important. Let me give you a little bit of family history. I'm a Viking from the north of England, and so the old Germanic fuck is much more part of my vocabulary than coitus. And I'm a working class kid. My father was a steel worker from Sheffield in England. I was the first kid in my entire extended family on both sides to ever go to university. The first one in my entire family.
And funnily enough, you talk like a steel worker, and you are facing a serious challenge from the administration for your political views and
yeah.
like that.
So maybe the bottom line for me, Austin, is that I'm a working class kid who's dared to intrude into the bourgeois institutions and stamp his feet and kick down a few doors. And I did. My first year at university was 1975, and I did actually kick down the Vice Chancellor's door that year at Sydney University, and I was eventually expelled from the University of Sydney in 1977 when I was the editor of the student newspaper there. So yeah, I've got a history of having fights with Vice Chancellors.
Okay.
It goes back to 1975.
Well, let's hope your days of kicking indoors and bothering Vice Chancellors aren't over yet. Thank you very much for your time today. Is there anything in particular you wanted to put on the record, so to speak, before we wrap up? I think we've gone in ever expanding circles around the incident. I think we've given it a pretty good context, but I don't want to leave out anything you think is important.
Look, I think we've covered everything here. I think it was really good to talk to you, actually, and we'll see what happens. I don't know whether anyone will pick this interview up, or whether the transcript will appear and be used as evidence against me. I've no idea. But look, it doesn't matter at this point, does it? They can't do anything worse to me than sack me, so they can't sack me twice.
Well, thank you very much. Let's hope that it sacks you once. Have a good day. Thanks for your time.